Hello everyone, welcome back. So the Collected Miscellany for Mavuika came out, and of course it's in Japanese due to the ongoing voice actors strike, which I fully support, by the way. It is what it is, come what may. I will probably end up playing the Archon quest in Japanese as a direct result of that, but that's okay, because there's probably going to be English voices missing as a direct result of that strike. Now, because of that strike, like I mentioned, the Collected Miscellany is in Japanese, and it is of course voiced by the wonderful Kenjiro Tsuda. For those who don't know, he is of course the Japanese voice actor for Dainsleif in Genshin, but I know him more as Seto Kaiba. So yeah, I really like his voice indeed. Now, unlike other characters, Mavuika is the Pyro Archon, emphasis on the word Archon, and Archon kits, pretty much since Nahida, or hell, even the Knighted Shogun's kit, are somewhat more complex than most other characters. So I feel like having Mavuika's Collected Miscellany being in Japanese just feels like it's going to make it a lot more difficult for a lot of players out there to understand what her kit is all about. So that's what I'm going to do. Instead of doing an actual dubbing of the Collected Miscellany in English, I'm just going to do a quick TLDR on Mavuika's kit, kind of how the Miscellany does it, but not really. But on top of that, Miscellanies tend to say things like, at a certain amount, etc, etc, etc. We actually know what those amounts are, unless there's some drastic changes between today, being Saturday, and Wednesday, when Mavuika drops. So instead, I'm going to add those certain amounts in there. But first, don't forget to subscribe, okay? I'm keeping the hype train up for Mavuika because, yeah, she's coming out on Wednesday, like I just said, right after lunch time, Sydney time at least. So that's going to be really, really exciting. So don't forget to subscribe because I'm going to be, pending shenanigans, streaming the entire release of Mavuika. We're going to be looking at what she can do. We're going to be trying her out in a whole bunch of teams, and then I'm probably going to start the Archon quest, and, well, hopefully I'll be able to finish that Archon quest. We'll just have to see. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Alright, without further ado, let's begin. So, Mavuika can be best summed up as the Archon who draws power from her team's fighting spirit, which in turn fuels her high damage ult and helps her boost the damage of her team. Meanwhile, her skill can also summon either her fire ring or her motorcycle, which she can use to rapidly traverse all over Teyvat. Now, when Mavuika uses her skill, she gets her maximum Nightsoul points, which is 80 Nightsoul points for those playing at home, and goes into the Nightsoul's Blessing state. Depending on how you activate her skill, you will either get the ring or the bike. So, tap, you get the ring. The ring follows the active character around and attacks up to, from memory, 8 nearby enemies every 2 seconds, dealing pyro damage. Hold the bike. Summon Mavuika's bike, which of course she can ride on land, on water up to 4.7 seconds, fly up to 3.5 seconds, or climb walls up to 1.75 seconds. Those durations coming from I Win to Lose's video, by the way, but I heard it was supposed to be a little bit less during the beta. Doesn't matter. The bike has its own set of pyro-infused normal attack, charge attack, and plunge attacks, whose damage is tied to her skill talent levels. That's very important to remember. Boosting her bike into enemies also does some considerable damage, so definitely worth considering. Now, after activating her skill by either means, if you tap her skill again, you will switch between those two modes, which both, by the way, will drain Nightsoul points. So they will both become unavailable when you run out of Nightsoul points and Nightsoul's Blessing expires. Ascension 1 passive. When anyone on the team triggers a Nightsoul burst, which, by the way, you just do by doing any elemental damage whatsoever, Mavuika gets a 30% attack increase for 10 seconds. This is really easy to maintain for those who are wondering. Recall the main point of the Natlan Archon quest. Nobody fights alone. This is how we arrive at Mavuika's ult. Mavuika, being the god of war, or the Archon of war, draws her power from the fighting spirit of her team, and thus her burst doesn't use conventional energy like all other characters in the game. You can generate fighting spirit in two ways. The first way is consuming Nightsoul in combat on a 1-to-1 conversion into fighting spirit. The other way is by hitting enemies with normal attacks once every 0.1 seconds, which generates 1.5 fighting spirit per attack. This just basically means you can't hit enemies in an AoE and generate a lot of fighting spirit. That only generates 1.5 fighting spirit, i.e. it counts as only one attack. When Mavuika has at least 100 fighting spirit, which is represented by half her ult bar, her burst is ready and she can consume it to activate her burst. Now, The maximum amount of fighting spirit, therefore, is 200 fighting spirit. When Mavuika activates her burst, the order of events happen in the following way. So, Mavuika jumps on her bike, she then gets 10 Nightsoul points and enters the Nightsoul Blessing state. She then lands her very hard-hitting AoE attack, which is part of using her burst. Then she enters what's called the Crucible of Death and Life state. Now, Crucible only lasts for 7 seconds, and during this time, even though Mavuika's Nightsoul Blessing is active, Mavuika's Nightsoul points don't drain, and she gets interruption resistance. Think the same amount as that I did Shogun. Furthermore, the talent scaling of the aforementioned hard-hitting attack AoE, plus her motorcycle's normal attacks and charge attacks, are increased based on how much fighting spirit Mavuika has consumed in order to activate her ult. Thus, the more fighting spirit you have before using her ult, the more damage you do. The Crucible state is of course cancelled if Mavuika leaves the field before the duration expires. Now, the Ascension 4 passive, Mavuika's ult, also buffs the damage of the current active character based on how much fighting spirit was consumed in order to activate her ult. Again, the more fighting spirit you have before using her ult, the more the current active character starts doing in terms of damage. Each point of fighting spirit will give your current active character a 0.2% damage buff, with a maximum of 200 points resulting in a 40% damage buff. Now, the buff lasts for the 20 seconds, however much you have, and it will decay over time until it reaches 0. In teams with Mavuika, Nightsoul Transmission, which is the mechanic that allows you to, let's say, swap mid-motion into Shilinen and you just start skating all over the place, right? This has a reduced cooldown of, I think, 10%. Don't hold me to that. Like all Natlan characters, while in Natlan, you could of course swap to Mavuika mid-motion, and depending on what you're doing, if you're on land, or if you're on water, or if you're in the air, or if you're climbing walls, you will swap to Mavuika, who is on her motorcycle doing that specific thing, right? In summary, you can play Mavuika as an off-field DPS and an off-field buffer, or you can potentially play her as an on-field DPS that buffs the living crap out of herself and does a lot of damage. So how you choose to play her and what you choose to do will of course be up to your own personal preferences and the teams you choose to play. I of course will be looking at a whole bunch of teams, so if you're interested in what kind of teams I'm interested in looking at with Mavuika, you should check out the top 10 Mavuika teams that I'm going to be looking into on her release. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully we all have a better idea now of what Mavuika's kit is all about, and hopefully we have a better understanding of what's happening on the screen when Mavuika drops and we start doing all sorts of crazy shenanigans. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. How do you feel now about Mavuika and her kit? Let me know in the comments. There has been some concerns being raised about Mavuika's kit throughout the entire beta cycle. We'll just have to see how those concerns end up panning out when she arrives. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action, and until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.